Hey everybody, this is Charlie Dobbins, and I'm back with another master class, Multifamily Investing Academy's Master Class Elite Group Coaching call, and also we have on the line the Owners Forum members as well. Today what we're going to be talking about is how to analyze a non-performing asset. And you might be thinking to yourself, are we talking apartments? Yes, we are talking apartments. So let me show you exactly what I mean by this. But before we get started, as usual, I always have to make the claim as required by the Massachusetts Bar Council's office. I'm a lawyer. I'm not your lawyer. Get a lawyer. All right? Now, in this next, what we're going to be talking about is what is also known of as a non-cap rate sale. Now, some of you may be wondering, oh man, non-cap rate, what the heck does that mean? It sounds too technical. No, it isn't technical. Let me explain. Now, you all understand this formula. And if you don't understand this formula, then you don't understand multifamily. But here is the formula. Cap rate equals the net operating income over the purchase price. Well, what is the net operating income? The net operating income is the income minus the expenses of the operating expenses and operating income. So it's the income minus the expenses. Well, what happens in the event that you're not making any money on the property, where the net operating income is zero? Well, look what happens. This is what the formula looks like. What happens with any type of formula where the zero is in the numerator section? You end up getting an answer of zero. So in this particular case, in a non-cap rate sale, it means that there's no income on the property. Now remember, what we're talking about here is the operational income. You can still have income on the property operating at a positive cash flow from an operation standpoint, but you don't have enough money to pay your debt. But remember, the debt doesn't apply to the net operating income. So in other words, all we're talking about is our operating expenses and operating income. And then when we subtract the two, if the answer is less than zero, then we're going to have a non-cap rate sale, or otherwise known of as a non-performing asset. So the reason why we were having this conversation is because one of my students came to me and said, hey, I've got these questions, I got this property, but the broker told me it's a non-cap rate sale. So how do I value that property? And I thought, you know what, this is a great topic for a group coaching call, because there's one major component in your analysis that I see new investors forgetting about all the time, because they've never had to do this before. You know, when you purchase a non-performing asset and the strategy is to reposition the property and make it a performing asset, what you're not taking into consideration in your analysis is time. Remember, when you look at the cash flow analyzer from Doug Rutherford, that package, takes into consideration time, but it gives you a valuation of the property today. And the valuation of the property today, because it has income, can be valued. But here, it's going to take time to value it. And what is time? Time is money. And so it's that amount of money that we need to add back into the analysis here in order to come up with the correct number for the plan. So, question is, how do you value the property? Now, what you need to do initially is you really need to do some detective work. And let me just take these notes down. It's going to be very, very simple, very simple. And you're just going to grasp this in no time flat. So the first step is you need to determine what the properties will trade for on a per unit basis after the repositioning. So in other words, if someone's showing you, hey, you're going to have to buy this property for, $30,000 per unit, and it's a non-performing asset. Okay, that's all well and good, but once I get this thing performing, what's the market going to accept for these properties? Well, $30,000. Well, that's not a deal. That's a fool's errand right there. So what you need to know when a broker is trying to pitch you on a non-performing asset on a per unit basis is you need to know when I get this property turned around, what am I going to be able to sell it for? And there are actual ways. It's not a guessing game. You can actually figure it out from a number standpoint. I'm going to show you at the very end of this video. So understand what the property is going to trade for on a per unit basis after the repositioning. Okay. So then what you do is you're going to deduct your profit. What? We never say anything about profit. All we do is cash flow, cash on cash, appreciation. No, let's talk about your profit here. You've got to figure out exactly what you are going to need to make based upon how much you're investing on this property. Now, you might just think to yourself, what's a good number? 5%? 10%? Well, in my case, it's 15% or I'm not interested. My money has to earn a 15% return on a repositioning non-performing asset for me to get excited about it. Why is that? Because this is a risky venture, guys. There's a lot of risk involved in repositioning a property. So many moving parts, so many things can go wrong. And if this is the first time you're doing a deal, man, God love you. Good luck, because it's gonna wear you down. So a 15% return on the money I invest is not a bad profit. That's actually what it should be. I mean, you think about it. If a broker can make 6% just for selling the property, and you are going to earn 15% for doing everything, for bringing huge value to the deal. Okay, so once you get the per unit that you deduct your profit, and I said in my case 15%, then you're going to deduct your per unit rehab cost. Now you might think to yourself, well, I haven't even seen this property yet. I have no idea what it looks like. And I can understand that. What you want to think about is, first off, we use $6,000 per unit as a benchmark. Now, why that number? Because Fannie Mae, actually I think it's Freddie Mac, has a rehab program. And the rehab program will lend you money to rehab your apartment complex. But one of the criteria is that there has to be at least $6,000 per unit cost in rehab. Otherwise, the property doesn't qualify. So we start off with this benchmark of $6,000. Now, what you also want to take into consideration is how bad is this property? Well, you're sitting here in your office. You've never even been out there. Property's 1,000 miles away. So how are you going to figure it out? Well, usually a little bit of rule of thumb might be helpful. And here's what I mean. If the property's built in the 60s or 70s, that's going to be a lot more than $6,000 per unit. If the property is built in the mid 80s, early 90s, yeah, $6,000 might be closer to what the number is. So you really want to take into consideration how ugly is the baby. And that's what's going to determine. But as the bare bones, the bottom line number is $6,000. That's where you want to start from. And remember, I want you to be conservative in your analysis. So $6,000 may be a benchmark for the lowball number, but hey, it might be $10,000 is what it costs you to rehab each unit. Now, keep in mind, folks, when I talk about a per unit rehab cost of $6,000 or so, that also includes the money you need to rehab the exterior. So if you need a new roof, if you need a paint job, if you need new landscaping, if you need the parking lot paved, all of those expenses are added into that per unit cost that you hear me talking about. Okay, just keep that in mind. Now, finally, you deduct the sales expense. Remember, that's about 6%. Well, you're going to be selling this property in 3 years. Let's add in the cost of the sales expense into that as well. I mean, we're not looking to take that out of our profit. We've got to pay that guy, and we know it's going to be there, so we better account for it right here and right now. Now, here's where things get tricky. You've probably understood everything I just explained to you. But now I'm going to take you down the road, and this is where new investors always go wrong. You then have to deduct the burn rate. And you might be thinking to yourself, what's the burn rate? Well, let me show you visually what the burn rate is, okay? Let's start by drawing an XY graph, just like we're doing in microeconomics here. The x-axis is time. All right. Now the y-axis, and I can see I don't have it here, but I'll just click on it. The y-axis is money. Time and money. Those are the two variables we are analyzing here. Now take a look at this. This is your expense column. All right. Your expenses start out here when you buy the property. Expenses are not zero. Even if no one lived in this property, you'd still have a lot of expenses. So expenses are always going to be there to run the business. And as you can see, over time, that expense rate increases. We don't know what the slope of that increase is going to be, but I can tell you that if you're repositioning this property and you're adding more tenants that live there, your expenses are going to go up. Your water and sewer expense is going to go up. Your trash removal expense is going to go up. Your repairs and maintenance are going to go up. All of these variable costs are going to go up as you add more people to the mix. So over time, your expenses will increase. Now, the next graph we have to look at is the income graph. Now take a look at the way I've structured it here, and this may be entirely wrong, but we don't know what the slopes are of these lines of the property that you're looking at. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that we try to we can figure out the slope of these lines when you look to see what the rents are and what the expenses are. But right now in this particular analysis, I'm just guessing at what the slopes of these lines are. So the income, as you can see, we buy the property here, but we don't start making any income, even $1, off the property until here. So all of this time, the income doesn't even start. But then the income starts to take off and it starts to grow at a much faster rate than the expenses, which is good. That's a good thing. So as we can see, when the two lines cross, that's our break even. That means we're receiving enough income to pay our expenses. We are now at 0. Congratulations. Now the problem is this. Here's the burn. You see all of these lines down here, this shaded area? This represents money. Money that it takes you to run the property every single month, day in and day out, and you're not even making any money yet. And all the money that we spend underneath this, in this little trapezoid here, we have to account for in our analysis. This is the part of the equation that the new investors always forget. They forget to add this number into the mix. All right? Now, the burn rate is not your profit. What it can do is it can deplete your profit, or at the same time it can increase your profit. It really depends upon how successful you are as a manager of this turn, of this whole repositioning. If you do a phenomenal job, then man, that trapezoid that I just showed you will be smaller, and that means your profits will be bigger. But if you do it wrong, that trapezoid will grow and it'll eat up all of your profits. That's what you need to protect yourself against. So, what would we say gets included in the burn rate? All right, well, the fact is, really the answer is everything. Everything that it takes to run the business. You're going to have to take into consideration the mortgages, the taxes, the insurance, the payroll, the water, sewer, your utilities. All of these things are items that need to be paid while the property is in this non-performing status. And all of these expenses get added up and they get thrown into the burn rate column, okay? So now what do we do? Well, the thing we need to do right now in our analysis, just so you understand how I calculate out just on a very, very simple analysis, now let's get back to the numbers, because folks, it's always all about the numbers. Okay, now write this down. You can see exactly what I'm coming up with. So let's say that we see this property, the broker's offering, it says it's worth $30,000, as is. And we go out and we do our analysis, and we say, based upon our analysis, and I'm going to show you how to do this analysis in a moment, we say, based upon our analysis, this property will be trading for $50,000 per unit once we have this thing performing at market rates. Okay, well, after $50,000, we're going to take out our profit. In this case, a profit on $50,000 will be $7,500 per unit. Now, the rehab costs we're going to use $10,000 for rehab costs. Remember, I said $6,000 will be the minimum. We're going to use $10,000 because we want to be conservative. They got a 6% sales cost. I'm going to charge that one out because I'm going to have to pay that someday. So I might as well, take it out of the other guy's hide and not my hide. And then the burn costs. I've added up all of those numbers, and then I've divided by the number of units, and I come up with a burn cost of $10,000. So when I deduct out all of those charges, my after repair value per unit cost of $50,000 brings me down to $19,500. If I want to do this deal and I do it right, I should only offer on this property $19,500 per unit. That's what my offer should be to the broker. Okay? Now, the question you have to ask is that a legitimate number? Well, what you have to do is you have to check the numbers, because as I said before, it's all about the numbers. Okay, so here's the first step. First thing you're going to do is you are going to figure out what is the average rent for a unit like this one after the repairs. In other words, what is the rent that we can get on this unit when it's a performing asset? How much are we going to earn off of these units every single month? Now, the next thing we're going to take into consideration is the expense ratio. Now, the expense ratio, if it's a all bills paid property, we're looking at 60 to 65%. If it's a tenant paid utility, let's use 50% as our expense ratio. Then what we need to know is, what is the per unit net operating income? I'm going to show you how to do that, folks. If some of you are probably thinking to yourself, this is easy. Some of you are thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, I'm going to need some help with this. Well, okay, fine. If you're going to need help, that's what I'm here for. And then finally, step 4 is, what is the after repairs cap rate? Okay? Now, what we need to do is the math. Here we go. The average monthly rent after the repair value for this particular unit is $750. Now, you take that number, $750, and you take out the expense ratio times 0.5. That means that the net operating income per unit on this property is $375. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply it by 12, because we want 12 months of income. Now, when you take a look at that, I'm doing the math right here with me. Once you look at that, the after repair value cap rate of 7.5%, if you've done your math correctly, what it comes out to be is that we'll be able to sell these units in X number of years for $60,000 per unit if we can get the average monthly rent up to $750 and we can get the expense ratio to 50. We will be able to sell this property for 60. What did we buy it for? We bought it for almost $20,000. And we had to add in $10,000 rehab cost and the burn rate and everything. So, ultimately, it's going to be 52.5 is what we're going to be able to, what we have to hit. That's our magic number, because the 7,500 is our profit. So if we can get these things sold at, let me take that back. That the 7,500 is based upon us selling it at 50. If we can get these things to $750 of rent, then the value is going to be $60,000 if the cap rate holds out. At $60,000, that means that $7,500 of profit that we had initially can now translate into $17,500 per unit. We just bought ourselves a whole lot of room. So we can start off at the beginning, at the very top line number, bring it down to the offer price, and then go back and make sure that our offer price makes sense in light of what the market is bearing, and that way we can determine, do we have a deal with this property? Now, let me show you one thing that I want you all to understand, and this is where it's tricky. Remember this graph, income and expenses, time versus money? This is where the problem lies. You see, you never know how much it's going to take to rehab and reposition this property. Not only does it take time to fix every single unit, but it's going to take time to even lease the place up. You know, not everybody's going to move in on day one. It doesn't work that way. It's not like a school where, you know, you move your kid in a freshman year and everybody moves in on the same day. 100% occupancy. It doesn't work that way. So the problem is we never know how long the time is, and we never know how much money it's going to take. So the rule is, I love rules, you know me, here's the rule. It's going to take twice as long, and it's going to cost twice as much to rehab or reposition that property than you think it's going to. So when you're doing your calculations, be incredibly conservative. All right? Don't blow it. You blow it here in the analysis section, you will never make it up on the back end. You find your profit when you buy the property. You collect it when you sell. And I know there's a student out there that was being asked. You know, somebody was trying to get him to buy a property in Texas where they did a full rehab. And I looked at the numbers. I knew right away these guys had blown it. These guys had absolutely blown it. They had overpaid. They had spent too much money in the rehab, and they were trying to sell this property for way too much money. And so therefore, you know, I just got to tell you, don't make that mistake. You don't want to be those guys. So make sure when you do your analysis, you are incredibly conservative with the numbers. All right? Now, because this one was recorded not live, it was not recorded live, I am going to post up here for the owner forum members who typically we chat while we're doing the live recording. If you have any questions, just send me an email to info@multifamilyinvestingacademy.com. But if you're an owner forum member, you know how to get a hold of me. So folks, I hope this was informative. I hope this helps you understand exactly what you're going to need to do and how you can figure out the numbers and still protect yourself by doing it correctly. I'm here to help. Let me know how I can, and I will talk to you soon.